Is it not a part of human nature to cheat or lie or steal at times? I mean, I'm not trying to be negative, but this is, it's everywhere. We constantly watch, Bernie Madoffs and white-collar people that are making millions of dollars. They have no reason to need more. They have no reason to cheat or lie, but for some reason they do. And what if your job, the only way you get paid, which is, doing scientific research, is if your hypotheses add up, if they turn into something that can make money? That's how you make a living as a scientist. So you're probably not prone to tell the whole truth about whatever you're studying or whatever product you have or whatever your hypothesis is. Is it that unbelievable to think that top scientists kind of fudge the data when it doesn't make their product or what they're looking at do or say or exist exactly the way they want it to? Does it really seem that implausible? Have you not been watching the news enough? Do you not know enough people to say, you know what? For the most part, you can't just trust people willy-nilly. You can't just say, hey, I just take your word for it, that's the way it is. I assure you, your doctor might have a gambling problem. Your doctor could have a drug addiction. Maybe they're sleeping with 20 women. I don't know, but the point is they're just human beings, and you need to take them off of that pedestal, off of that throne you've put them on, where you write off all of your own intuition, you write off your own thinking, and you hand your baby to them without a thought. You hand them your liver, your heart, your lungs, or your life without thinking about it. They are no different than your mechanic down the street. There's good ones and there's bad ones. But what I want to show you now is how science is actually happening, how choices are made, how thorough the scientific discussion is around vaccines. Now, I went to ACIP. I've talked about this. This is the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices. And today we're going to talk about the brand new hepatitis B vaccine. And I told you that there was a discussion at ACIP where they absolutely asked really important questions like, has this adjuvant ever been used with other adjuvants? And then nobody seemed to have an answer. And then they, don't take my word for it. They actually posted the video. That's my point. Here is the brain trust of American vaccine scientists sitting together, pondering the brilliant science that's been done to see if this vaccine is safe enough for people. They are on this thing, and they're thinking about it, and they're there for you. And look how thorough this discussion is about the brand new hepatitis vaccine and its new adjuvant. Here you go, live from ACIP.
Is there any comment on using this vaccine at the same time with other adjuvanted vaccines?
We have no data to make a recommendation one way or the other.
So just to sort of put this in context of other vaccines, whilst preclinical studies were not done using these vaccines simultaneously, our general approach to immunizations is that they can be given at the same time in different limbs.
Dr. Hunter?
Are multiple adjuvanted vaccines used in Europe or other markets?
Dr. Ward, do you want to comment?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, I think unless there's any further discussion, we will take a vote on this recommendation.
I want to remind everyone to please check your voting, machine thing, and voting is open.
Thank you very much. So the voting is completed, and it is unanimous to support this recommendation. Thank you all.
There you have it. I mean, there it is. When you trust a vaccine, Howard Stern, did you see that? Did you see how thorough the discussion was about a vaccine being put on the market? Here it is. We have a brand new adjuvant, okay? Can I take the monitor out in my ear right now? We have a brand new adjuvant. And it's never been tested really with other adjuvanted vaccines, meaning these two chemical bodies are being injected into one person. Somebody asks, have we tested them together? And they say, we have zero data on that, never been tested with other adjuvanted vaccines. Then the person steps in that's sort of one of the heads of this committee and says, Just so you know, if you give a yes vote, we are going to put them together. That's what we do, and we're going to do it if you vote yes without having ever tested this being done. Then a really smart doctor steps in and says, well, let me ask you this question. Has anybody else in the modern world ever put 2 adjuvanted vaccines into a person at the same time, since we obviously do it without thought? And then, could you talk about this, Dr. Ward? Not to my knowledge, no one else in the developed world does this. Okay, can we vote? Okay, so what are we voting on? We're voting on a brand new adjuvanted vaccine, brand new adjuvant we've never tried, we've never tested, and we're going to put it with other adjuvanted vaccines which has never been tested in humanity. We don't know how this is going to go, and no other country ever attempts to do this either. So if there's a yes vote, then let's hear it now. Unanimous. Doesn't matter who asked any of those important questions, they all got the exact answer they were looking for, which is, we have no effing idea. Perfect, that's all I need to know. Now I can move on. Yes for me. Yes for me too. Oh, over here, yes, yes, yes. Yes, across the board. That's it. So when I tell you you are human test subjects, you must recognize that is proof. You are human test subjects. They have just decided to put this vaccine with a brand new adjuvant, going to be mixed with other adjuvants, and never been tested. Never been tested. No data, she says. No data. So when you tell me, oh, well, my doctor's on this, your doctor, by the way, as soon as that vote went down, the crowd gets up and they run out of the room. NBC was there, CBS, all the news stations run out to start telling you there's a great new vaccine on the market that you can now get that's going to protect you from hepatitis B. From 8 to whatever age, you can now get a brand new hepatitis B vaccine. They're going to sing its praises, and they're not going to tell you that there was no data on how safe this adjuvant was, because they're going to test it on you. They're going to see how it goes in public. So let's see that discussion. Right after they voted, right after everybody rushes out of the room to celebrate this brand new vaccine, here's the discussion that happened inside the room.
And does anybody around the table, we don't need to go around and verify our votes, but does anybody have any comments they wish to make about their vote? Dr.
Great.
Stevens?
So just a slight reservation. I think this is a huge advance and a step forward. I am concerned about that signal, that myocardial infarction signal. I am concerned about the use of this new adjuvant, and certainly urge us to continue to look at the post-marketing data carefully.
Dr. Hunter?
Just a question about that. How soon would we be getting that post-marketing data update here?
There's 2 kinds of data. The vaccine safety data link data will require people to be using the vaccine to develop substantive database. And Dr. Sun, do you want to comment on the post-marketing data that FDA is requiring?
I think for the myocardial infarction study, we're seeing that the date or likely for completion is May 31, 2020. There will also be studies looking at autoimmune diseases as well as herpes zoster, and there will be a pregnancy registry as well. So that's all included in the post-marketing surveillance.
Thank you.
Don't you kind of wish they had the discussion before they voted? I mean, don't you think that would have been like a good thing? You have an issue. I have a slight issue. I mean, I think we're moving steps forward, and this is brilliant. I'm really happy to be here and be a part of it. But I have a little concern over the myocardial infarction. You know what that means, folks? Heart attacks. He's a little concerned about the fact that there were heart attacks in the test group, and he really hopes that the surveillance after we put this out in public is well done and good, because after we're testing on you, we're going to see if you start dropping like flies, and hopefully somebody will have a computer program that'll pick that up. Oh, and by the way, just so you can all be at ease, we're going to give this to pregnant women, and we're going to have a separate little pregnant women registry to see if they die too, or if their babies die. But nobody could afford to test that ahead of time. We didn't want to charge the pharmaceutical industry that is just hanging in the death throes of barely surviving on the hundreds of billions of dollars they're making right now. We got to make sure that that money gets distributed to them instead of testing this product before you get it. This is how it works, folks. I'm not making this up. In fact, let's look at, really quickly, originally, Dynavax, can we bring up this slide? Hepatitis B vaccine works, but raises safety issues, says the FDA. This is what's interesting. Back in July 26, 2017, the FDA does not approve it because it causes what? Myocardial infarctions. It's causing heart attacks. There were deaths in this group. I'm going to talk to a specialist on this in a minute. And then all of a sudden, just a year later, we see all of a sudden, oh, okay, it's good now. Vaccine gets FDA nod on third try, on the third try. Do you think that they changed the vaccine at all? Or do you think they just spent their time explaining away the problems they were having with the vaccine? I want to get into more detail with someone that knows a lot more about this than I do. We have Dr. Sherry Tenpenny joining us. Dr. Sherry, can you hear me? I can see you talking. You're probably not in my monitor. Hold on one second. Is she muted? Why don't you try talking, Sherry? We're trying to see if we got your audio happening. Is your audio on? There we are.
I think I'm on.
There we go. All right, excellent. So, Sherry, I just showed everybody at the ACIP meetings, they all approved a vaccine, even though they had no idea about this new adjuvant. The question was, have we ever tested this adjuvant with other adjuvanted vaccines? They admit, no, we haven't. Does anybody else in the world give multi-adjuvanted vaccines at the same time? No, they don't, not to my knowledge, but we're going to do it here. Your vote, they will come together. So this is a brand new vaccine being developed by Dynavax. Do you know anything about this new adjuvant? Because very quickly, you know, we're doing a lot of discussions about aluminum and the dangers of aluminum in vaccines. And something that I don't know if it's a scientific statement, but I've noticed the last two ACIP meetings that there's brand new adjuvants coming online for a lot of these vaccines, and none of them have aluminum in it. So I have the sense that sort of the way they sort of got away from mercury when they knew that mercury was a problem, they're getting away from aluminum without admitting it. They're going to slowly try and get rid of aluminum and bring in other vaccines. Do you think that's happening? And tell me a little bit what you know about this new adjuvant.
That's a mouthful, Del. I think that's like 15 questions in one.
Okay, let's start with the first one. Tell me about this adjuvant.
Well, let me start with the first I'd heard about this adjuvant, that has this really, it doesn't even have a name. They call it 1018. They call it Adjuvant 1018, was when I heard your report. You were discussing it with Catherine and Patrick about being at the ACIP meeting, and they just had approved this in Adjuvant 1018. I think that Catherine mentioned it from her notes. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. Let me go look that up. Talk about a can of worms and talk about a despicable additional piece of garbage that's being injected into the human body. I mean, you started by saying that we are an experiment. It's worse than that, Del. It's worse than that. I mean, we're very familiar. We've talked a lot. You know, those of us in medicine and healthcare, and those of us in the vaccine education movement talked about the two different arms of the immune system. We generally refer to that as Th1, which is the innate arm of the immune system, which is the part you're born with. And then there's the Th2, which is what the vaccine is injected into your body to stimulate the Th2 that creates an antibody. Now, how I remember that and keep those two things straight is the Th1 innate. Number one, I am one individual, and each person is one individual. So that's the Th1 arm. That's your natural born immunity. Th2, when you look at any scientific paper that draws a diagram of an antibody, it looks a little bit like a pitchfork. It has a little pitchfork thing, and that has two arms on it. So I remember Th2, the little pitchfork, is the antibody arm. Well, that was what we have known about antibodies and about the entire purpose of the vaccine industry, really, is to absolutely just inject foreign matter to engage, ignite, and explode. Engage, ignite, and explode that Th2 response. We want as many antibodies as we can possibly generate. Well, that is the whole, so this whole thing has been kind of in the back of my mind in all the years I've been doing this. It's like, you know, this whole issue about antibodies is just horrible. How do we let people know that antibodies don't mean anything? Well, when I was looking up this new adjuvant, this 1018, it said that it is in the category of adjuvants that they are now coming out with, which sort of goes to your thing about, are they making new adjuvants that are no longer containing aluminum? They are creating new adjuvants to stimulate the toll-like receptors, T-O-L-L, toll-like receptors, which were actually just first discovered in 1996. They discovered them first in fruit flies. And when they found this additional part of the immune system, they were German and Danish scientists, and toll is a word that's very much like eureka. It's like celebrating, and that's how they got their name. Well, the following year, in 1997, they found toll-like receptors in humans. And so far, they have identified 10 of them. In 2011, the people who discovered the toll-like receptors, and there are 10 different receptors now that they found, were given the Nobel Prize in Biochemistry and Physiology. That was 2011, Del. We've just known about this for barely 7 years. And already the pharmaceutical industry is jumping on the toll-like receptors, trying to manipulate them. Now think about this for a minute. The toll-like receptors are the head of the Th1 of the innate immune system. They are the joystick. They are the innate intelligence of our body. They recognize bacteria and viruses that get into our body naturally, and they recognize it by pattern recognition, not by receptors fitting together, but by pattern recognition. And as soon as that toll-like receptor, particularly toll-like receptor 4, starts to identify the presence of a pathogen in the blood, by pattern recognition, they call in the white blood cells. By cytokine expression, they send out their little walkie-talkies with these cytokines. The white blood cells come in and gobble them up, and it's done. And this is done hundreds, if not thousands, or even millions of times a day in our own body. When we cut our skin, maybe when you cut yourself shaving, or if you brushed your teeth and your gums bleed a little bit, that there's bacteria that get into our bloodstreams. The toll-like receptors identify it, call in the white blood cells, neutralizes, it's gone. Only when the immune system response gets way overdone, when there's too much bacteria, there's a big amount that gets into the bloodstream, like when you are injected with a vaccine that has viruses in it, and they can't quite call in enough help, then they start initiating fever. And this is why fever is so important to your health. And we need to allow fever to happen, because when fever happens, then the body starts to warm up and it starts to get rid of the pathogen, calls in more white blood cells, more natural killer cells, all these things start happening. And when the war is almost done, when we're about ready to say we're winning this, then and only then do the B cells come in and start releasing the antibodies. The antibodies are the cleanup crew. They're the things that come along behind when we're just about ready to unwind this infection, this pathogen that's in our system, and the antibodies glob onto the rest of it and make it go away. We have got the entire vaccination industry system, what's happening in our bodies, completely backwards. All they want to do is inject foreign matter to make antibodies that are markers of contamination. It's 3 o'clock. They are not there to fight the battle. And so now with these toll-like receptors, now that they've identified them, and now they're wanting to create adjuvants, which are things that accelerate and enhance the production of antibodies. And they're going to be manipulating the primary joystick, the primary control bar of our entire immune system by manipulating these toll-like receptors. Once you turn that on, there's no off switch. And we have no idea what's going to happen down line once they start manipulating the toll-like receptors. This new adjuvant 1018, manipulates toll-like receptor 9, which lives on the inside of our cells. It's not even on the surface, it's on the inside. And it controls the replication processes of our nuclei, our genes, our DNA. And so now they're throwing in a chemical that's never been tested in a vaccine that's completely unnecessary. We already have 2 hepatitis B vaccines accepted and used on the market. We don't need a third one. So we're creating a new vaccine we don't need, with an adjuvant that's never been tested, to manipulate the most important and sensitive part of our immune system and absolutely implode human health. Now, not only was this vaccine untested, I read the 61-page paper about it. The reported side effects were things like pulmonary embolisms, which is blood clots in your lungs, thyroid condition. There were 19 people that had those heart attacks that they were sort of concerned about. 19. And 16 of those people died. 16. And then when they reissued it and they started looking at the adjuvant again, because they turned it down, like you said, twice. In November, it's because they had massaged the data and they had comfortably eliminated all the potential causes, thinking these people had underlying cardiovascular disease that we didn't know about. And so they died because they had bad genes, or they didn't tell us that they had heart problems when they got into our nasty study. And it wasn't our adjuvant that caused them to die. I mean, you know, they were probably going to die anyways because they had heart problems anyways. This thing does not belong on the market. It is probably, you know, the worst absolutely adjuvant that they've come across so far. And that they're going to have like a pregnancy registry that we're going to inject babies, or we're going to inject mothers with hepatitis B with this adjuvant, or we're going to create more vaccines with this adjuvant to inject into mothers. Del, it doesn't get any worse than this. It just doesn't get any worse than this.